Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to the Light 'em Up Lounge. Welcome back here at our cozy virtual Zoom lounge live stream to all of you, all the folks around the world over on Facebook. It's crunch time. We're only a day away from the Premium Cigar Association trade show in Las Vegas, the annual cigar Christmas, if you will, the big trade show. It's crunch time for all the manufacturers, the retail community in particular in the United States. Lots of international folks traveling to Las Vegas, though. I'll be leaving for the airport in just a few hours myself, but I'm very happy and very glad that our dear friend, fellow, and brother of the leaf, Mo Maali from Patina, found the time to join us on the eve of the annual cigar trade show to give us an update about Patina Cigars and to join us yet again, a second time for Mo here on the show. First of all, I would love to welcome everybody joining us here at the lounge. I would love to welcome everybody joining us over on the Facebook live stream. As always, if you have questions, dear friends, family, please chime in, make yourselves heard, put your thoughts and your questions underneath the live stream into the comments. I'm always checking so I can forward your questions to Mo. And without further ado, here is the man, the myth, the legend, Mo Maali from Patina Cigars. Mo, it's great to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the opportunity.
It's a pleasure and privilege for us, Mo, and I fondly remember our first conversation here. It's been a couple of years. It was lovely to see you then at the trade show just thereafter. Yeah. And we'll see each other again in just a few hours. But
yes, sir.
You know, we have a global audience. We have people joining us all the way from Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Africa, Europe, even the US and South and Middle America, of course.
Right.
You are, even though you have kind of the undertitle for your brand, beauty in age or through age, you're one of the young generation of brand owners and cigar manufacturers. You bring a breath of fresh air to the industry. You're a very down to earth, straightforward kind of guy, and you also truly represent what most people would call a boutique cigar brand, right? But for everybody who hasn't heard about Mo Maali and Patina Cigars, give us a little bit of the inside baseball, how you started in the premium cigar industry with the podcast, with your first steps into the manufacturing and brand owning side. But just for everybody watching who's not yet familiar with Patina, let's kick things off there.
Sure. So in 2014, a friend, my friend Drew and I had moved, so we wanted a way to keep in touch with one another. And so it started out as a cigar review blog, and we actually based our rating system off of Sylvester, Stallone, and Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. And so that was how we rated cigars. And then he's like, "Hey man, do you want to do a podcast?" And I said, "What is a podcast?" Now, mind you, this is 2014. So I said, "Okay, sure." He goes, "It's a way for us to keep in touch," and so we did. And that led us to doing a cigar with James Brown of Black Label Trading.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of opened the doors to that world. And, I had some discussions with people that opened up some doors. The original patinas, were made at Casa Favilli in Granada, Nicaragua, which was the Mombacho factory. And then in recent years, 2019, we moved to Nicaragua American, NAXSA, which makes brands such as Crowned Heads, Dunbarton, Dapper, CLE, and things like that. And now, here we are.
Just a brief one out of curiosity.
Yeah.
What does a review and rating system based on Stallone and Schwarzenegger and their movies look like?
So I forgot what number one was, but you know, so like if it was a cigar we really liked, it would be a legendary movie versus a movie that they wish they could forget. Right. So you know, obviously a Rocky movie for Sylvester Stallone is legendary.
Right.
A Terminator movie or something like that for Arnold Schwarzenegger is legendary. So, you know, that's kind of how we did it.
Do you still keep some of those like in the archives, or do you still have some of that stuff on record somewhere? Because
I
I
think they
sometimes
deleted the
wonder
website.
when
Yeah.
you produce content for such a long time, and I
Mhm.
thought about this when we had Steve Saka on the show. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
he was involved with all the geeky, nerdy stuff in the really early days when
Right.
when nobody really knew his or her way around the internet even, and he was
Sure.
all over cigar forums and boards. And then I started to dig into some of that stuff, and it's often hard to find. The
Right.
websites look incredibly hard to navigate, and in fact they are, but you can
Mhm.
still find some of those gold nuggets. So do you still
Mhm.
do some of that? Do you still have some as a reference?
I don't think the website stuff still exists. We never renewed the domain or anything like that.
Right.
Now the podcast, you could listen to the podcast from when we started, and that's on all of the platforms. You know, the podcast is called The Sultans of Smoke. So we have episodes going back at 2014, 2015, whatever, and just on from there.
Now,
So yeah, it's
I,
been a journey.
I mean, you know, we often talk that the cigar industry is a tough one to
Right.
be in, let alone succeed in.
Sure.
And there's this old saying of you better start with 2 million in order to get to 1 million. Um, all these crappy jokes and these really hard-earned experiences. Um,
Yes.
now, did you ever have like a clue or an idea of what you were getting yourself into, or would you say it kind of happened more, you know, by coincidence or accident?
No, I had a pretty good idea. The one thing I probably miscalculated was the amount of that I always just thought that if you came out with really good cigars that they would catch on. And I was a bit naive to that. Which over time you realize it's not only having a really good product, it's how you present that product and how people perceive it and how they view it through their own lens, versus what they're currently smoking or looking to trying new things. I think I've gotten better at taking that over the years and kind of doing more with that. But definitely, I would say that was one thing when I first started that I really miss, or I should say, under valued in terms of importance. Um, but I'm not making that mistake anymore. So the reality is, and I truly believe this, that not only for a cigar to be successful, it has to be acceptable in multiple ecosystems, if that makes sense. Not only, let's say, in the online cigar community, and then you have the brick and mortar community, and then within that, okay, and then so that means everywhere from the staff to the consumers in the store, and then not only the consumers in the store, but the thought leaders within that store have to find it as an acceptable brand, because really it's all of that put together. I mean, whether we realize it or not, we're human beings. And when we're in groups we want to feel like we're a part of something. And we want to feel like we're smoking the right thing or drinking the right thing or partake. So I think understanding all of that and kind of how that meshes together has been pretty fascinating.
That's a lovely thought and gold nuggets that you share with us here, and truly what I wanted to get towards with today's shows as well. It's those elements of how do you actually build a strong nucleus? How do you build that brand for it to blossom and shine, in particular in that very competitive boutique segment where there's plenty of players, and especially in the last couple of years we saw plenty of new brands emerge, some with truly high price points, some with a more approachable concept to it, if you will. But I love that you mentioned you have to appeal to different ecosystems and different audiences. On the other hand, people could argue that if you're trying to please everybody, you'll never be relevant to anybody, right?
Absolutely.
Where do you find that golden cut, or that middle point where, as you phrased it, you're acceptable for different ecosystems, but still very true, authentic, and genuine to who you are and what the brand is?
Well, so you understand where you're at. You don't, we talk about ecosystems, or let's just say climates. Like I don't want to be ice in a desert. Okay. So, you have to kind of understand who you appeal to and run with that. I've been lucky enough to where there are so many people that have really gotten behind the brand, from consumers to retailers. We're building a little bit of, just a really good support system. And I don't think you could make your cigar acceptable in and of itself. The people have to do that. And when people ultimately look at, okay, does this brand resonate with me? Okay, so not only what the brand represents, does it resonate with somebody? And over time, you learn who it resonates with and what shops you have the best chance to be successful in. Excuse me, the type of consumer that will be most likely to try your cigar. And even if I look at the lines of my cigar, the cigar lines, we have 4, the Connecticut, the Habano, the Maduro, and the Sumatra. We have actually started to see the Connecticut not only with boutique people, but start to really gain more of a mainstream, like the shops that have it are able to sell it to people that don't smoke boutique cigars historically. And that's really what you want to see. I think that if you are a small brand and you want to rely only on a certain segment to purchase your cigars and to consume them and to smoke them and enjoy them, it's really hard. But you're never going to be everything to everybody. And you have to accept that. I could literally sit in a room and 5 people love it, 5 people think it's okay, and 5 people say this is, whatever. So yeah, it just kind of.
Do you feel that it changed ever since you started, in particular when you think about the people that the brand resonates with?
Yeah.
Is it like, did you have a target audience even, or did that change throughout the process? You realized, it probably sticks with somebody else than I had initially thought and planned.
I knew that I never wanted to rely on just the what I call the what's new crowd. That was going to be impossible. You were never. I'm a big believer that you introduce lines or you introduce extensions of your brand when the market calls for it, right? You're not going to be I don't want Patina to be a brand where I'm just pushing new product onto the market and seeing what works. And I'm going to listen to the market. What's it telling me? What am I missing in my portfolio? What segment am I not currently appealing to? Is there something that we could put together that may appeal to them? There are just certain things that don't fit in where I want the brand to go. So there will be certain things that we just won't do at some point. But there are other things, man, you're always looking to evolve. And who you appeal to, has it evolved? It's pretty much by and large who I thought the brand would appeal to. So that really hasn't surprised me.
In general, do you feel that in particular for the smaller brands, for the quote unquote boutique guys, it's more about, learn as you go, figuring things out along the way, kind of also a bit more of like a startup mentality, where especially for entrepreneurs of a younger generation now, you try to get to market quicker with a minimum viable concept. Then
Sure.
you see how the market reacts, and then you try to adjust. Whereas some of the bigger brands and the more
Right.
established companies will probably have a very strategic approach. Like, I don't see STG winging things and trying to come with something to the market unless somebody has really done the numbers to the T, right? And not that one is better or worse than the other, quite the opposite,
Right.
just different
Correct.
philosophies. And we also discuss what is boutique, and so that's maybe also an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah. If you want to define boutique by smaller batches, just small company by size, then yeah, Patina is certainly boutique. Probably micro boutique at this point. We're trying to graduate. But but if you want to be, you have to think like where you want to get to. You can't think like, okay, I'm not thinking about what am I doing. I'm thinking about what do I have to do to get to where I want to be? And that's why, for me, every cigar we come out with, Patina is on the band. Even if it's a different line, Patina. So everybody knows what they're smoking. It's always there. A more classical approach to the branding, to the presentation. Trends come and go. There are brands that were doing much better than me 4 or 5 years ago when I started, even 2 years ago, and you don't even see them anymore. So I think if you have to know which trends are here to stay versus chasing trends to try to capitalize on everything, because that's impossible. I mean, it just is. So understanding where you want to go and how you're going to get there and keeping that in mind at all times. That's how I approach it.
Amen. Peter, you had a question. Chime right in there.
Thank you. Well, it's great to have you here. I'm a
Thank
big
you.
fan of you and your cigars.
Thank you, sir. Great to be here.
You're coming to Wisconsin at the end of the month, so I'm going to try to make it to that event.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, July 27th. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Peter, apologies for interrupting. Just put your mic down, and we hear you better.
I do that every week.
Brilliant. There we go.
So my first exposure to Patina Cigars, the lounge that I frequent is called Metro Cigars in Brooksville, Wisconsin. About 4 or 5 years ago, I went in on a Friday night, and the guy that worked there says, "Hey, this rep walked in, gave me a couple of these cigars. Do you want to try one?" I said, "Sure." And so I don't know if that was you or if you've got a little distribution network that was in that store, but I tried it, liked it.
Yeah, it's funny because that store actually doesn't carry Patina. So.
I know. That's kind of where I'm going with this.
Yeah, right.
It's like the owner of the store asked me about a month ago. He says, "What do you smoke that we don't carry?" Like he's telling me he wants to expand some of his lines, and so I can pester him to start carrying Patinas, but that's all that I can really do. It's like, so where does it go from there? How much is his part? How much is your part?
Like, are you talking in general terms in the dynamic between a brand and a store?
Yeah.
Okay.
In general and specific. I mean, is there something else I can do besides pester the owner, say, "Hey, you got to get these in"? I think the guys are, because I only smoke what I buy from the lounge at the lounge, so I'm not going to go and start handing out patinas to the other guys sitting there. Of course, I could and say, I tell them smoke them at home and then come back and pester Paul about bringing them in.
No, sir. Peter, I really appreciate it. You have done everything you could do. I thank you very much for bringing it up and saying, hey, this is a brand. It is guys like you and people, Maddie, who just joined us as well. You guys are more effective than I will ever be. You guys are more effective than the reps of the brand or the brokers that we use will ever be. And that's not an insult to myself or an insult to the broker. but you, as a customer of a shop, don't have an ulterior motive. You are basically saying, I'm not, I smoke this, I purchase this, and if you have it, I will purchase it. That is more powerful than anything that I could ever do. And so yeah, you that's amazing. Thank you very much.
Is there a chance that you would stop in that store when you're in town?
Yeah, I've been there a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, bring some cigars and we'll beat up on the owner.
We'll go see him. I think we're gonna do a couple days in Wisconsin. So obviously I don't live far from there. So we'll get up there, run around a little bit.
Yeah, you're based in Illinois?
Yeah, in the Chicago area.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Peter, just one little thought or comment, because I find it very interesting. You mentioned that a retailer actually asked you as a customer what you are smoking that he currently does not carry in his humidor. I think that's a very smart question, to be honest. And to be honest, that's the first time ever that I heard from somebody joining us here, or even for myself, that a retailer came up with that question to a consumer.
Interesting.
I've asked him in the past if he could start carrying some other cigars. It's like, I smoke a lot of boutique, even though most of the stuff we call boutique really isn't, but it's more of a blue collar store where they've got, the Romeo and Juliets, they got 20 SKUs of Perdomos. And I'm not saying those are bad cigars, but it's like, they're not the cigars I smoke. And I've been asking them off and on, why don't you carry some tats? Why don't you carry some of this? And so slowly but surely they've been building out their humidor, but the place you're going at Lake Country end of July, that's got the best humidor in all the state.
Yeah.
So, like you said, I'll do my part. And
yeah, no, you already have, and I appreciate that. And to get back to what Reinhard was saying, in that is, as a retailer, for him to do that is very, very good. You want to see stuff like that where the retailer is saying to the people that come in and buy from him, hey man, what do you guys want to see? So I think that's a really smart move on their part too, to give credit to the store. They run a great business there.
I wonder if some of it was motivated by not having availability of all the cigars that they normally have. And, they're saying, hey, we can't get stuff we always get. Why don't we start branching out?
It could be, yeah. I mean, there's any number of reasons, or even maybe there's a shift in what their customer wants. I remember when I worked retail, we worked to really shape the profile of the customer in the sense of what I liked became what they liked. And so that was, and when I first started there, that wasn't the case. They smoked much different stuff than I did. So as a retailer, you really have an opportunity to educate, to bring certain things to the table beyond just being there for somebody to buy a cigar, have a lounge to sit in. And so the fact that they're asking that is a really good sign. I think that's fantastic that they come to.
4 or 5 years ago, when I started asking them to carry some other stuff, he'd always tell me that stuff doesn't sell. I'm going to carry stuff that sells. Yep. And I would just go away mad thinking, that's your job, buddy, to educate these people about what they're missing.
Yeah, that's certainly a battle that every rep or every brand will tell you that they have with that retailer, broker brand or rep brand. Where does that responsibility really lie? Is it with the retailer? Is it with the brand? Is it with the rep? And really the answer is all three. And I look at it as multi-pronged, that my job is to be out there raising awareness of the brand, having product for when you order it, and that it has consistent quality and is consistently available. The rep's job is to come in, support you, see if you need any product, maybe do some cut and lights and things like that. The retailer's job is to properly humidify them, properly display them, and not just stick them in a corner and tell you they don't sell. If you're going to bring in the cigars, bring them in and give them an honest chance. Don't stick them in a corner, put them out front, say, hey, this is new, try it. And if it doesn't move after that, then you have your answer. But if you're putting it in people's hands and they're coming back and buying it, you should give every brand that you bring in that opportunity.
Right.
So I think that's where all the, that interconnectedness of responsibility versus just on one party.
Mo, that's another wonderful thought right there. And I'm curious now, with the experience of being a brand owner and carrying the flag of Patina Cigars, what would you do differently if you were to go back into cigar retail? And what are some of the key learnings that you took as a brand owner, looking back now on your time in retail, or looking on the other side on behalf of the cigar retailer?
Man, that's a really, really good question. I think that in order to totally build a successful humidor, you have to step out of yourself. And I think Maddie had just made a comment there, and I think that that's very, very true. You can't only bring in things that you like. You just can't. So you have to understand who your clientele is, what they are looking for, and be cognizant of that. Peter also said something about bringing in things that that doesn't sell. One time I was talking to, we had Matt Booth on my podcast, and he said, and Matt Booth put it perfectly. He said, my cigars don't sell, or you don't sell my cigars. And that's a really, really good point. And that goes back to that responsibility between the parties. Am I giving something a fair shot, or am I just, whatever? So being more cognizant of that. But I think there's always a human element of, we sometimes support certain people more than we do others for various reasons. There's always that part of stuff. But certainly being able to step more out of myself, and that would be the biggest lesson that I took if I were to ever go back to retail.
As a brand owner, though, which part of the equation do you feel brings the biggest value in driving brand awareness and creating more brand awareness? Is it the physical meetings with the end consumers, or with the retailers who then translate and relay the message? Yeah. Is it the social media component? Is it traditional media?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So social media, just as in every facet of life, is usually not representative of what's really happening on the ground. If you were just to look at social media versus actually being on the road and going into brick and mortars and sitting with people in the lounge and seeing why they purchase cigars the way they do, how they purchase cigars, you will have a very, very unrealistic viewpoint of the cigar market. Being on social media is like watching sports highlights. You're not going to see the nitty gritty or the everyday of what the everyday looks like. No one is going to stop and take time to put a cigar that they smoke every day online. They're going to want to post their stuff that they don't maybe smoke all the time. So being cognizant of that separation, that there's social media and then there's kind of a reality on the ground. That's huge. Being in the store and sitting with people and doing those things are probably still the most effective overall. But COVID really changed the way people consume and purchase cigars. And so as a small brand, we basically lost 2 years, maybe even a little bit more, of the ability to connect with people on the ground. And that has been really slow to come back because people are kind of used to smoking at home or smoking whatever, or buying this. So we're starting to see a little bit more pickup of lounge stuff, but yeah, that's another thing that plays into it. So, but I do think overall, for me, and this is not for all brands, but for Patina in particular, being on the ground, meeting people, sitting with them, smoking with them, is by far the most effective for me.
And in this instance, you're talking primarily about the retailer and the staff, or literally meeting the consumer in the environment of that lounge and humidor?
If you would have asked me pre-COVID, I would have said both. Today, because of the amount of turnover that we see in retailer employment and retailer employees, it's more important than ever to connect with the consumer directly. Because the rapid change of staffing at different stores is really is much different than it was pre-COVID, especially.
Interesting. I never thought about it that much in regards to the tobacconist retail landscape. Obviously, me coming from a hospitality industry, I've experienced that, and I saw that for the past decade that I've been in the industry, with staff turnover being at such a high rate and such a high pace, and I thought that usually in the tobacconist retail environment, you still have some of those old schoolers, and you'd have a bit more of loyal staff and people who stick there for a couple more years. But it's interesting to hear that your experience is different in that regards, and it's probably also because there's so many cigar retailers in the US alone, and various tiers or categories within.
Reinhard, you would go into certain shops, an employee would have been there for 10 years, 15 years, and all of a sudden they're not there anymore. It's just a different environment. With people are just facing a lot of different pressures. I think that if you look at cigars in a vacuum and the cigar market in a vacuum and don't try to understand the larger macroeconomic picture of what's happening, you're going to be wondering a lot. But the reality is the world is bigger than cigars, and there's a lot going on in life and outside, especially economically, where a lot of the reality on the ground has changed. So you just got to be realistic about that, which means that there's going to be less loyalty in employment.
Yeah, certainly. Well, also, honestly, Mo, I love some of the points that you make here, and some of those value bombs that you drop. Also, because I think you're probably one of the first, if not the first ever on the show to openly say, like, social media is one part. It might be important, but there's a stark contrast between what you see on social media and the perception that you might get from consuming stuff through Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever floats your boat, and then what happens on the ground, and what kind of impact does it have for a brand, and the sheer business reality.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it really is. That's just
One little follow-up question on those points, and then we'll bring in some more of the questions, because I see a lot of raised hands. But when you said that the landscape has changed quite dramatically throughout COVID and thereafter, what are some of the biggest evolutions and changes that you see affecting how people consume cigars, how they purchase cigars, as you mentioned?
Yeah, so online obviously became much bigger. The being used to not smoking at the lounge, being used to let's be honest, sometimes people buy online because they get better deals. Now Patina's not a brand that usually, we don't get, but there are others. People's expectations. I think also during COVID, there was a lot of opportunities for us to get closer to consumers just because the amount of lives and podcasts and things that were a little bit different. But yeah, I think mostly just like we saw it with really like cut and lights in the attendance at like cut and lights where we're trying to introduce the brand or reinforce the brand. People just didn't seem as interested in that. And then there was just a little bit less loyalty towards where they buy cigars from, that it became more of who has what I want and how much do I have to pay for what I want. And if I could save some money, then I will. And that there's nothing wrong with that as a consumer. Like I said, we can't continue to live in a vacuum. People are getting pressured from all sides economically and all of that stuff. So if I was in a retail environment, I'd be asking myself, what is the value proposition I'm giving to the people that come to my lounge beyond just having cigars to sell? What's the atmosphere that I'm creating? What's the environment like? Is my pricing fair versus am I trying to gouge people? So those are all things that kind of go into it. And I just think that, it's a two-way street too, because I think a lot of retailers did really well over the past few years, and you could say some brands did too. And sometimes it's natural to take for granted your success, but what are you doing to maintain that? That's the big question going forward. And I think that's really what's changed. How are people that have had success the last few years, are they able to bring themselves back down to earth and say, this is reality, and how am I going to live in reality over the next few years?
Awesome points. Many thanks for sharing, Mo. Mace, you had your hand up for quite a while. Let's start with you, brother. Good to see you.
Hey, Reinhard, good to see you. Good to see everybody. Mo, great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Mace.
And,
Where are you at, man?
I'm actually just in the UK, north of London.
UK, north of London. That's not a British accent.
No, New Jersey.
New Jersey, the great state of New Jersey, the suburb of New York City. No, I'm kidding.
New York's parking lot. Yeah, I know. Can't even argue, but yeah.
Aaron, don't feel bad. I call the state of Indiana entirely a Chicago suburb. So.
Yeah, it's not too far off.
Yeah.
Now, Mo, I guess I'm sort of going back to what you said at the beginning about how you had to create something that kind of satisfied or appealed to the different groups. And you mentioned sort of online, the brick and mortar. When you were saying that, was that more in case of was that in terms of trying to actually appeal to these different groups and demographics, or do you feel that there's different palettes amongst those different groups that you had to appeal to?
That's a really good question. And so we see differences in palettes across geography, not only in what kind of cigars they prefer to smoke, but also the vitolas that they prefer to smoke, if that makes sense, depending on where you are within the US. There's definitely that. But I was more so talking from the sense of how you position your cigar as a brand. The blends are what the blends are. The cigars are what the cigars are. I make cigars that I enjoy, that I love, that I believe in. And I don't try to cater to any one group with the cigars themselves. Now, the branding and stuff like that, you try to figure out who your real market is. And so that's what's constantly evolving for me. Gotcha. Like we were talking about a little bit earlier, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, so I guess when you then chose, or what led you down the route of saying Habano, Connecticut, Maduro, and I think Sumatra, what led you on that route?
Well, first and foremost, nobody could sue me that I stole something, you know, a name or a trademark or something like that. So that was a protection built in, right? So that was part of it. But also, I think the simpler that you keep it, the easier it is for people to remember you. And that's why every cigar has the patina band on it. Every cigar has an easy name to remember. So the easier you make it for people to remember you, the more likely they are to remember you.
So true. That's great. Thank you so much for that.
Yes, sir.
Brian, over to you.
Hello, good morning from sunny Southern California.
Oh man, I don't even know where at in California.
We're in like Burbank. It's like Los Angeles.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. Sounds
But
good.
It's not noon yet, but I've got my tequila sunrise.
Yeah,
and,
well, probably need to see somebody about that, Brian.
Maybe that's true. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. That's a song.
You're right.
I look like Jimmy Buffett in my nonsense Hawaiian shirt.
You look absolutely fantastic.
So I think I have a stupid question and then maybe a better one to follow up, hopefully.
No stupid questions here, Brian. Oh, good.
It's
Fine.
funny.
Bring him
What
on.
I've been saying for the last half hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were talking the name of the company, and you were talking about like, oh, you don't want to get sued and this and that. I was just the thought occurred to me, the similarity of La Polina.
La Polina.
There's just kind of, I don't know. Do you ever have any issues like just with a kind of a similarity, not legally, but like, I don't know, like you're talking about for shelf space or what?
Yeah.
Like you ever have like a cigar owner be like, I don't know, your name is kind of similar to this other name. Like, I don't know if we can like figure it out.
No, you get retailers sometimes okay, so there's no La, right? So I get, is it La Patina? First of all, there's no La. So that in of itself is a distinguishing characteristic. So the fact, like when people say to me, oh, La Patina, well, that actually shows ignorance on your part because there's no La in the name at all. So you're just trying to, but I heard that more so my first couple of years. Now I think it's pretty established that it's Patina and people, they know. But yes, when I first started, there was definitely, and probably even up until a couple of years ago.
Interesting. Okay,
For
fascinating. Okay, so more interestingly, hopefully, I would like the conversation. We were talking about retailers and spokespeople and the balance and all these different things. And I thought one piece that was missing for me, from my just experience as a consumer, is like maybe, I don't know, the elephant in the room is so much space is taken up when I go to the brick and mortar by the big ones.
Oh yeah,
the brands that we all know that, like for me, I tend to like a smaller brand more often than not. And I have a hard time finding them. Like I have a list on my phone just from people I met on this call that were cool. And I'm like, I want to try that. Oh, that's great. I wrote it down on my notes. I go to the store and I'm like, well, here's all the brands I see everywhere else. I always see in every single cigar store, and not very much space for maybe the smaller guys. And so then you start to think, well, now you're competing for not a lot of room when you see just shelves of this one and this one and this one. We all know.
That absolutely spot on. So in California, you have a unique environment too. So a couple things. One, your guys' tax structure. So if somebody doesn't have their California license to be able to, that makes it very difficult. That's part of it. The other part, particularly in LA, as you know, there's let's say the secondary humidors, let's just call it that, of non-disclosed regional cigars. So there's that. So there's multiple things that go into it, but man, by and large, you're absolutely right that it's tough, and ultimately you're fighting for a very small section. which brings me back to how important it is for opportunities like this that Reinhard has afforded me, that I get to talk to you guys directly. And then if we build this, like, it's like this network, right? And it's like, that's really how it builds when you're a smaller brand. But even if I took out an advertisement in Cigar Aficionado tomorrow, it would do absolutely nothing in comparison to spending $1,000 on a flight to go out to a region and go visit my customers and sit with their people and do that.
Yeah.
Just one. Yep.
Totally. Yeah, it's frustrating sometimes for me, I think, because like I'll go in and, you know, even if I know ahead of time these are the brands that I like, it can still be hard to find. Like I'm a big fan of Caldwell, and I had been to this retailer several times. Assume they didn't carry it, couldn't find it. Down on the bottom in the corner, which I'm short, so that's for me. I think that I would be able to find it down there, but like, and of course all the asylums are on the top. I think people like really tall people want those giant cigars, maybe, so they put them on the top shelf. I'm not sure, but
remember what we talked about, the interconnectedness of responsibility, right? And how you try to get a brand to move. And so now what could have happened was they've had Caldwell for a long time, or any brand. It could be Patina. I don't want to even bring up another brand. Let's just say they've had Patina for a long time. It didn't move as much as they wanted it to, so they put it on the bottom shelf, right? But if you're going to bring it in the first day, it's on the bottom shelf. That's a problem. Are you smoking a Romeo and Julieta from the island? Is that what you're smoking?
Oh, no, this came to me from Luxury
Oh,
Cigar.
okay. I thought that was
Luxury
What is that?
Despo Cigars.
Oh, that's what cigar. Oh, interesting. Where's that out of?
I think it's made in Nicaragua. I couldn't find it on any of the big websites. Luxury Cigar Club
I'm
sent
trying
it
to
out.
think. I'm sorry.
They have a
Right.
lot of unique stuff I've never seen anywhere else that comes to me from them. So.
That's what I try to tell people about me. I'm unique. You've never met anybody like me.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you.
Mo,
Thanks,
just,
man. Appreciate you.
Mo, just because you brought it up that very second, and in the beginning you said, you know, it's not enough to have a great product and then think it will stick with other people purely because
100%.
you. If you were to try and nail in just a few bullet points what makes Patina unique and the USP that you would always hand to a retailer or an end consumer as to why they should grab one of your cigars compared to a myriad of other brands that they have in their daily rotation or on the humidor shelf.
So the versatility. You could smoke Connecticut to Sumatra front and back, and you will taste every single cigar. When I look at what makes Cuban cigars legendary, right? It's not just the taste profile. It's that I could literally smoke 4 or 5 Cubans in a row and not even feel like I smoked a cigar. It's so light on the palate. It doesn't burn out your palate, but you still have tons of flavor. And that's how I look at approaching Patina. Not looking for the Cuban profile. Only Cuban tobacco has that profile. So I think when people, but the principle of why do people enjoy it? I'm not looking to burn anyone's palate. You could safely give it to somebody who's been smoking forever or somebody that just started smoking, and they will enjoy it and they will get something from it. I think I just think that versatility is the big thing. It's really it. It's versatility in the humidor.
And that clean effect that it has on the palate, where do you normally attribute that towards? Is it just using properly fermented, well-aged tobacco?
Absolutely. And then just not having tobaccos that are really, or at least not using parts of the plant of the tobacco that's so heavy all the time. The US consumer, especially, is a little bit different than other, international consumers and things like that. Where I think a lot of American consumers prefer a little bit bolder, maybe, than some of the other areas of the world. And this gets back to my theory of the people that really are more likely to stick with your brand and buy boxes of it and things like that are typically going to be your people that are more of in that mild to medium range than people that are looking for very strong cigars. Because people who smoke a lot of cigars can't keep smoking really strong cigars. They look for something that they could smoke over and over.
Yeah, good point. Maddie, I saw that you had your hand up a bit earlier, so please chime in. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments as well. Or we'll give Maddie a chance to chime back in just a second. Macy, our resident lawyer, is here with us as well. Or Maddie, if you're here, please chime in. Sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry. I couldn't get the mic to go on.
All
Technical.
good. We can hear you.
Thank you so much. Hello, Mo. Hi, brother.
Hey, how's it going, Maddie? How are you?
So, actually, you all touched on it. I was actually going to talk about it from the perspective of someone that's smoked patina quite extensively. Not kissing your butt, Mo. You know that. I am very consistently smoke all of his blends. Your fifth anniversary was absolutely phenomenal. It just added to already a great portfolio. But what I love about patina is something that I wanted to share personally, was that as someone that smokes a wide variety of cigars, I mean, an extensive blend, to me, very realistically, let's say we like smoking our Padrones, our Olivas, our Davidoffs, all these other cigars. It's not realistic to want to smoke that every single time and keep your palate intact and also enjoy cigars. The thing I love about patina is that you could smoke it any time of day. You could be a seasoned smoker or a new smoker, and patina is honestly going to be a cigar that you can enjoy. And so it resonates with cigar smokers at all levels. I know that I teach cigar 101 classes here in Arizona, and patina, hands down, is one of my favorite cigars to use, because I believe very strongly that even new cigar smokers should grab a cigar and taste the tobacco and not have to be worried about being punched in the face with a lot of that, spicy flavor or the, cedar notes and that kind of thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but when you're trying to approach smoking a cigar, and let's say you're golfing or you're doing any other task, or just hanging out with your friends, having a cigar that's going to be well balanced, that's going to be flavorful but light enough that you can actually enjoy it. And let's face it, there's a lot of times when you're out and about and you have friends that are just like, hey, let me try a cigar. You're going to look through your I look through my box of cigars going like, what can I give them that's not going to overwhelm them, or that's not so expensive that they're going to waste it. You know what I mean? Realistically speaking. And patina is just a great cigar that you can enjoy in any environment. And I think it's really important to know that as our boutique industry, our cigar industry as a whole continues to evolve, that you're going to actually build that brand loyalty, right? And part of it is the relationship component, which I mentioned before, that we've all mentioned before. You're of course going to smoke from somebody that you like. You're going to, a cigar that you like, that's consistent. I've honestly, knock on wood, never had a consistency issue with patina cigars. So I know that that you take great care in the construction, the presentation, and also make sure that you provide a product that you could actually ship overseas, or even, here in the States, we're going to be able to enjoy the cigar. Yeah. But that was more of an observation, so I apologize. It was still lengthy. But
Yes.
that I love you, Mo.
I love you more. Last time I was in Arizona, we actually we had an event at Finance Cigars, and Maddie and I and her husband and this guy Hollywood, we all played dominoes together. So they taught me how to play dominoes. So it had literally been about 20 years or more than about 30 years since I last touched the domino. So it was awesome.
That's beautiful.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I had just one question though. I'm sorry. Just a real
Yeah.
quick question.
Maddie, go ahead. Yeah,
Sorry
all the
for
world.
taking so much time.
Not at all.
Did your time with the Sultans of Smoke and you know everything that you did speaking to other brands directly impact how you approach Patina's future?
In what sense?
In that when you first started out, you know,
Oh.
you're now 5 years in. And I know
Yeah.
that you've had a lot of time talking to other people within the industry and smoking a lot of cigars. So did the course of your conversations with other people give you an idea on how you see Patina evolving and growing and where you wanted to see it go?
Oh, okay, gotcha. Of course. Yeah, because if you think you know everything, you're done. You know, so I try to learn from as many people as possible, and so I'm always open to new viewpoints. Excuse me, learning new things, new approaches, new ways to look at things. So yeah, I would say so, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's always. I think my strategy has always been the same, but maybe some of the steps along the way have kind of changed on how to get there. And so, and also that's also because of a changing consumer. You know, I mean, even the consumer today is different than the consumer 10 years ago. You know, and so that's a big part of it too.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Yeah,
all for
no,
your time.
thank you, Maddie. Appreciate you as always.
Great question, Maddie. Many thanks and great answer, Mo. Macy, over to you.
You can hear me. We're good. Sorry, I had to switch to my phone. So anyway, I've got an old laptop, old phone. I spent all my money on cigars. I have nothing
Wait a
left
minute, are
over.
you the Macy Hansen that always comments on Cigar Coop?
Absolutely. I hope I'm him.
That's
If there's
you.
someone
You're
else,
a legend. I always see your comments.
holy cow. Well,
There you
I
go.
survived one defamation lawsuit. They clipped me on a breach of contract claim that I'm appealing. That's garbage. Anyway, so I don't need another. I would say I'm Macy D.
I don't want to
Hansen,
delve
Macy
into your
O.
legal issues.
Hansen. The Bills are Macy O. Hansen. That Irish bastard owes people a lot of money. I'm not saying. Anyway, first of all, I'm just going to lay in on a comment and then get to a question. And first of all, greetings to all y'all, my only friends in the world. Mace, I love Mace. His name is so similar to mine. We're going to have a cage match or something on a name change for one of us. But anyway, love you all. Great to see you. Highlight of my week. And happy 4th of July to the gringos out there. But here's the comment. I'm just going to go and the following is the comment of the Macy Hansen, the same bastard that posts on Cigar Coop and other places. It is not the comment of Reinhard Pohorik, Global Media Conglomerate Inc., SAR, or PMHB, whatever it's called. It's only my comment. Disclaimer. Okay. Actually, it is Brian Julian's opinion as well. I am going to know. Buying cigars in person that you don't smoke at the shop is essentially a stupid thing to do. I don't do it. I believe I buy cigars in the shop. If there's online is here to stay. It's going to grow. Anyone who fights it, I think, is tilting at windmills, or even more absurd than that. I've been smoking 20-some, a lot of years, decades. I buy a lot of cigars. I'm a box buyer too. I mean, you're just throwing money away in this idea that the brick and mortar owner somehow, like, you know, his kids need to go to Princeton or whatever to support. Like, that's just insane. It's just economically ignorant. It's just defamatory to online retailers that, like, selling something online, you're now evil. And this bullshit always comes from people that own shops that look, do they have additional expenses? Yeah, maybe that's why we should. It's a different model. And I live in what I call cigar desert. If I didn't have access to online, I'd be smoking far more limited selection. And I think most retailers, big retail, pardon me?
Are you at Macy?
I am in Mississippi. I'm in Jackson, Central Mississippi.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
And I sued a shop owner a client of mine sued a shop owner on the coast. I found out when I was buying a box of Don Carlos. That was awkward. So, anyway, you buy online, you save a bundle, you have greater access. You can support, you can be selective on where you buy online and support certain folks that it's not, so it's just painting with a wide brush. And
by the way,
no matter what people say, they're going to lose. They're going to lose this fight. It doesn't matter.
Okay, but too, just to add to that, there are plenty of online sites that also have brick and mortars. Especially now, a lot of brick and mortars are actually starting to build more of an online presence, which is great. But
that doesn't even. That doesn't matter. There's nothing sacrosanct about leasing a building from someone and having if you want to do that, that's great. I'm not saying it's bad. Let me be clear. I like it. I love going into lounges. But this idea that one taste preference is better than others and the market's bearing that out, because the problem is you're selling the same product that people largely consume at home for significantly more. That would be the correct analogy. On some podcasts, they'll be like, well, if you go to a bar, it costs more. I'm like, of course. And do you buy every beer that you buy or consume at home at a bar and pay? Of course not. So using your analogy, you're correct. It is like going to a bar. And I don't buy beer and liquor at a bar and paying, I want to spend $1,000 for a $50 bottle of, Four Roses and drink it at home because you happen to have a brick and mortar store. And that's for some reason is really important. And we need to just all go broke to support you. Dumb. It's not working. Okay, here's my question about online media. I am very influenced. I'll say by Half Wheel. I think they do a great job. I sometimes tease. I think they make good money. I think they deserve it. They built that up. They risked everything. I hope they are with what they deliver. But when they finally are delivering an alternative to Cigar Aficionado, which I loved when, I was younger and when they actually had, cigar content. But anyway, my question, how influential do you think, websites like or even CA are? How do you view that in terms of not just your brand, others? You talked about it a little before, and I don't want to get you in trouble. If you want to no comment, that's fine. I don't want to, but
let's comment on anything.
Sergeant
you can't be afraid. People the more afraid you are, the less people respect you. I think if somebody has a question, unless you're going to throw somebody, you try to answer everything honestly without demeaning somebody. So go ahead, man.
And we're all, I think we can all agree, we're all operating here in good faith. We love cigars. We want the health of the industry. There's nothing but good faith in terms of, I think, the questions, the answers. And if not, you don't belong in the lounge. We've got, I think, a very good environment. But can you talk about the media landscape, how you view that, whether, for example, and kind of sub question, if I don't know, quit being a lawyer, thank God, best to say, and I don't know, hit a big, arrival to Half Wheel, and actually doing feature do you think the market could bear something like that? I think Prince dead, or do you think you kind of have how do you view that? Because
so
you would have a better perspective.
Okay, so I will say this, that I have to be very careful how much I focus on cigar media for the sake of my own mental health. Okay. So if I were to chase every opinion, I will literally go crazy. So I actually don't. I try to keep a level head and not get caught up in a lot of that stuff. Now I will say that there are definitely some guys that and ladies that are doing it better than others, no doubt about it. In the sense of how look at you could sense how seriously somebody takes it by the content that they produce, by the things they are putting together. I think that there's always room for more if you're going to do something that adds value or that people want. And as I was saying, in this constant evolution of consumption and how people consume cigars, how they buy cigars, there will continue to be new opportunities for people to step in and give a new take on media or a cigar or how they operate a lounge or an online site. And that's the beauty of constantly changing. So yeah, basically, if it's really good, yeah, there's a market for it. I think, you know what I mean? But I will say this, that the amount of people, again, the difference between social media cigar consumption and on the ground cigar consumption. If I were to walk, and I'm at a lounge right now, if I were to walk out and start talking to people, have you ever heard of this? You ever heard of that? And they're going to be like, man, I don't even know what that is. So understanding that the people that partake in cigar media and all that is still even a smaller segment.
Do you think does that include the CA? Just as a follow up,
Mhm.
I mean, do you think that's the case of traditional print? I mean, the CA's ads are. If you ever see their ad rates, they're incredibly expensive, and well, in the magazine, damn, it's pretty much all ads, so they're apparently being sold. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is all this money is going into it. So, I mean, do you think some of these big boys doing that or do you think it's just different strokes for different folks, and maybe they're just trying to pound the name recognition?
I think if you were to go into your average lounge throughout the country, and you actually talk to the people in the lounge that aren't really social media or anything, they'd have heard of Cigar Aficionado, but probably haven't heard of even ones that to you and I are like, how did you never hear of XYZ, or how did you never hear? And so they'll be like, I don't know what that is. However, if we're looking forward, okay, and we start to look at where's the consumer of tomorrow, a lot of those people have heard a lot of these things, and they do know what Half Wheel is, and they do know what Cigar Coop is, and they know who Reinhard Prohoric is and Light 'em Up Lounge, and they know who developing or Cigar Dojo or whatever, they know these things. And so how, they're I guess we're in this state of flux a little bit, I think.
Very cool. Now you've got Macy speechless. That doesn't happen often, Mo. Well done. I'm just kidding. Macy, many thanks for the insightful comments and your question. Mo, before we get to the end of the show, give us a little bit about your expectations for the upcoming trade show and the rest of the year ahead.
Man, that's a tough one. There's certainly a lot of new stuff coming out. So there's always that. Actually, I smoked something, and we could talk about this off air if you want. I smoked something very, very good that I really enjoyed recently that you have something to do with. Sure.
Sure.
Has a gold band on it. Can I talk about that?
Of course. We're
Are you sure?
Forum. Of course, Mo. Everything is good here.
Fantastic. Unbelievable. Obviously, doesn't take a rocket scientist that knows tobacco to understand what, so we don't need to talk about that. But man, what a fantastic cigar. Anyway, in terms of the show, that's probably one of the best cigars that I've smoked in a really, really long time.
Wow. That's a statement, Mo.
Yeah, no, it's, that's fantastic. So anyway, yeah, man, I think, look at, 2021, PCA was not well attended. But the people that were there, the retailers that were there to put cigars on their shelves, which meant a lot of opportunity for people such as myself. The question every year is not how many retailers are there, how many people are there, how many people are there to actually conduct business versus be on vacation. And so that's the real question here. That's what I'm always excited to find out. And every year I like to be realistic with myself. That where do I fall in the prioritization scale of who's going to want to see me and who's not, and things like that. I think Patina's in an interesting position going into this show, especially with the 5-year anniversary cigar recently coming out, even though I'm technically in my 6th year, but COVID kind of. Patina's at that weird spot where there are people that never considered it before in bringing it in. And now you're 6 years in and whatnot, and you've showed an ability to stick around and you've showed growth. That people are like, hey, you know what? Maybe this is something we want to look at. And so even though I'm not going to have the flash and the new cigar this year, I mean, I have stuff in the works that's coming out for next year. But again, we talked about listening to the market, understanding where you're at. That, hey, this is a brand that I know is not going to, for lack of a better term, bastardize their own brand, that is not going to just come out with something new every week and make me buy it or whatever. That if I jump on, there will be a slow, steady expansion to the line, and a brand that I can put on my shelves, has product, will be there, and and comes out of a factory that has the tobacco that they use. And Reinhard, that's the one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit earlier, that I when I look at the cigars, and Maddie had brought up the consistency and the things like that, part of that is understanding what factory you come out of and what are their strengths. And every factory is going to be different. And so I understand the strengths of the factory that I'm at. So the tobacco that I use in my cigars are things that are readily available on a consistent basis. Right. And so, that's just a part of it too. That's all part of, So yeah, it's interesting. This will be a very interesting PCA for me in that regard.
Excellent point that you make about the choice of the factory and the manufacturing partner that you have, the strength and weaknesses that truly have to align with your philosophy as a brand and the way you want to be,
yeah, of course,
you want to be understood and perceived. And also, I love the fact that you make a very clear point about building a core portfolio of recognizable, consistent, reliable cigars, instead of just branching all out and creating 200 different SKUs, but to give everybody an opportunity to, over time, slowly and steadily learn and understand what is Patina Cigars, and then have the consistency and the reliability in the product. And as you said, proof's in the pudding, and it takes time to build that momentum. It takes time to build trust, but slowly and steadily, people will discover and then realize that, hey, this is consistent, and you deliver what you had promised for the past years, plus you're still around, right? Which is also kind of a statement. And so very well done for that, and I wanted to compliment on that, because I think it's very, very important. And we often talk on the show about having a clear and concise portfolio that is well put together, instead of just trying to flashbang stuff here and there, and then you end up in this whole clusterfuck of God knows how many numbers of SKUs, where people just get lost, I feel.
Yeah, man, it's that does work for some people. I don't think it would work for me,
Fair enough,
because
absolutely.
it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit my personality, and it doesn't fit, kind of what I want to build over the long term. But man, when I look at some of the brands that I want to learn from, we talk about who do you look at, how do you, Maddie had asked, who do you talk to and things like that. I'm always trying to soak up, and especially from people, not just the people that I kind of like look at and I'm like, I really like how they did this. The people that do things way different than I do.
Mhm.
I want to learn why they're doing it that way. Maybe I'm missing something. And so you definitely like to get a full picture on that.
Excellent point, Mo. And Maddie put it in the comments. Patina lives consistency. I think that's a true testament to what you just said. And man, I wish you boatloads of that consistency and of success and
Thank you, sir.
continued joy and happiness with what you do, and
Thank
all
you.
the best and lots of success for Patina Cigars. You know,
Thank you, brother.
you're a very humble, down to earth guy. You're a straight shooter, and you're very real. Besides being
Thank
a wonderful human being to be around with. So
Thank you.
wish you nothing but the very best, Mo.
Thank you, brother.
Keep rocking, and I'll see you in a couple of hours, pretty much.
Yes, sir. We're excited.
Can't
Excited to see
wait,
you, my
and
man.
I can't wait to enjoy a good Patina cigar together with you.
Yes, sir.
But thank you so much for taking the time,
Thank you.
especially so close before the show when everybody's busy scrambling and trying to get to Las Vegas safely. I wish you safe travel. Good trip.
You as well, man.
and I'll see you there in a couple of
My
hours.
pleasure. Thank you
Can I
all
jump
for
in?
joining.
Sorry.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I wanted to jump
Yeah.
in at the end here real quick again and just say to clarify, I don't want to get canceled or anything. I just wanted to make sure everyone, when I was saying earlier about the big brands that are taking up all this shelf space, I'm not taking anything away from them. I recognize and appreciate the fact that these are the brands that we also talk about on the show all of the time, that have put in the time and the effort to make sure that they're creating consistent good. It's not like a good beer analogy. We go in and it's all Coors Light. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Macy called me and he's like, as your lawyer, I want you to go on the record. Yeah.
Brian was giving legal advice on the side.
Exactly. Yeah. No, my only point was they're not the only ones making good, consistent cigars like yourself.
We're all good on that.
Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying. And to everybody joining us, there's a very fair chance that you might see Brian and myself sitting next to each other next week in Southern California. So
Real quick, I saw Mike Strauss on here earlier. Oh, he's left. Okay. From Boveda, and I wanted to. He actually recently helped me get into a retailer in Kansas City, so I wanted to say thank you.
Well, Mike is a regular here on the show as well.
Mhm.
I think we'll see him in Vegas, but good to always see so many familiar faces and great people joining us.
Yeah.
That's a wrap. Thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thanks,
Love
Mo.
you, love. Light them up.
Thanks,
and
guys.
see
See
you
ya.
all next
Bye-bye.
week. Mo, thanks again.
See you, Reinhard.
Thank you. See you guys.